Hi, I'm George Gerbo, and welcome to Washington Times Weekly, where we get to sit down with our reporters and talk about their coverage of the latest news and events. And joining me this time is Washington Times legal affairs reporter Alex Sawyer. It's good to see you, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. A whole bunch going on in and around the Supreme Court. We'll start with a recent decision to reject a challenge by the Republican National Committee to Pennsylvania and how they allow voters to file provisional ballots on Election Day, even if those voters have already sent in mail-in ballots. What's kind of the rationale behind that case and the details?
Yeah, so we don't really know why the court didn't want to hear it. It would take four justices typically to grant a case and schedule oral arguments. But in this instance, they decided not to take it. They didn't really give a reason. But it was the RNC had challenged Pennsylvania, a lower court, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court actually held that voters who had some sort of issue with their mail-in ballot. So whether it was lacking a signature, a date, something like that, they could go to their polling place and cast a provisional ballot. And that was said to be lawful. The RNC was saying, no, like that's not what the state law says, trying to keep those provisional ballots from being cast in addition to the mail-in. So the Pennsylvania Supreme Court had ruled that the provisional ballots are okay. And the RNC took it to the Supreme Court, but they decided not to take it.
Hmm. It's interesting, and we'll see if there's any as we ramp up toward another election season.
Yeah, and we'll see if there's any issues. I guess they'll be doing this for their midterms in 2026. So we'll see what happens there.
Moving on to a case in Florida, and it involves something that the court has taken up in the past in terms of prayer and specifically praying around in and around high school football games. We've had a ruling a few years ago on the court in terms of prayer at the 50-yard line of a football game. In this case, though, from Florida, Alex, a Christian school wanted to pray over the loudspeaker over its public address system before a game with another Christian school, and they're now coming to the court to have them grant that, hopefully in their favor.
Yeah, so it was a Christian school. Like you said, I guess the championships, the playoffs with another Christian school, they had planned to pray over the loudspeaker ahead of the pregame. Like it was a routine that they did. And I guess from the filing, it actually says they were able to do so years prior. So it was odd to them that the state athletic organization didn't permit it that time. So they have taken this, all the way to the Supreme Court, looking, I think, to what you mentioned previously. I think it was about 2 to 3 years ago, the justices had ruled for a coach out of Washington that would kneel and pray on the 50-yard line. And it was not mandated prayer, but players could join if they wanted. And he ended up being punished by the school for doing so. He was told he could pray like outside of the stadium, but the justices ended up finding for him. And so I think that that's kind of what you see these religious liberty advocates hoping to get to the court and have them take this case too and extend that over the loudspeaker. I think the reason that the state organization and the lower courts had given for not allowing it on the loudspeaker was that it would then be considered state-sponsored speech or government-sponsored speech, since this was, the state organization holding these various playoff games.
And the court will be busy with that if that school gets their way and the justices choose to hear it. And they're busy with a whole bunch of other things as this term kind of winds its way down. This time of year is when we get a lot of these rulings as we head into the summer. What are some rulings or decisions that we expect the court to take or make here in the coming days and weeks before they head out for the summer, and then they'll come back in October?
So two major ones that we're waiting on, which I think will probably be towards the end of June, when we get those. Usually that's when the justices wrap up their term. Sometimes they go into the first week of July, but one is the birthright citizenship case. If you recall, there was the argument about Trump ending the right to become an American citizen if you're born on U.S. soil, if your parents are not a U.S. citizen. That was challenged, but the real issue there was these lower court judges issuing injunctions, really blocking a nationwide policy. And so it'll be interesting to see what the judges do there. Do they speak to any of the merits when it comes to the birthright citizenship issue, or do they mainly focus on what lower court judges should do or look at when deciding whether or not to block a policy nationwide? So that's a big one. The other one, whenever I talk to court watchers and I ask them, what's the biggest case of the term? And I think I saw that with the presence of the audience and even the press section being so filled during oral arguments, is the case out of Tennessee, where Tennessee passed a law banning medical care or medical treatment for transgender youth. And that is now been challenged at the Supreme Court. And there's a lot of interest in that case. It's the Skermetti case.
Yeah, it's not only just a lot of decisions to come, but monumental decisions, major decisions that could shape the future of
That's right. If they were
policy.
to rule for Tennessee, I think you're going to see a lot of states go ahead and pass similar laws, or if they haven't already, similar to what we saw when Dobbs was handed down, when Roe v. Wade was overturned and that issue was sent back to the states. I think you could see, dozens of states move to implement some sort of bans for medical treatment for transgender youth.
Yeah, we court watchers will be watching. We know you will be watching as well, Alex. I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you.
You can find all of Alex's work at WashingtonTimes.com and on social media. I'm George Gerbo. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.